What is happening to this channel? There is a plastic pistol on my table. Man, what are we coming to? Guys, what's going on here? No, look, I love Glocks. Contrary to what you might believe based on the normal fare that you see come out of my content, I actually love Glocks. I do. I think they're a great pistol, and I'm going to prove to you that I like them by reviewing the only one that I have. So today we're going to be talking about the Glock pistol. So I want to tell you a little bit about my mileage with Glock. I've got a lot of experience with these guns, like most people, nothing special. So my first pistol on my 21st birthday, my dad gave to me, and it was a Taurus chromed out 38. And I, like an ungrateful little puke, immediately, and I'm not joking when I say this, within 1 hour, ran to the gun store and traded it for a Glock 17. And I feel a little bad about doing that to this day, but you live, you learn. So I went and got this Glock 17. It was a Gen 3, and man, I cut my teeth on that Glock. I learned everything I know about pistol craft on a Glock 17. I took the majority of the training classes I ever took was with that Glock 17. Carried it concealed all over the place. And I got some great personal one-on-one time with some serious heavy hitters and guys that just took me under their wing and showed me the way of the gun proper. And fast forward many years, I went through a lot of Glocks, and I shot them a lot. In fact, where I used to live, I could literally shoot out my front door. So I shot a couple times a week. And this is back when ammo was cheap. So, man, I was slinging brass like y'all wouldn't believe. But I went through a lot of Glocks. 17s, 19s, 21s, 22s, 23s, 26s, 27s, 34s, you name it, 30s, 30Ss. I've had a ton of Glocks, and I like them. They're great. I even went through the phase of the Gucci Glock phase where everything has to be ported and stippled and neon and all this stupid nonsense. And now I've kind of grown up, right, as we all do. And I have just come full circle to realizing that actually Gaston Glock pretty much had it figured out from the start. And these pistols, mostly stock, are pretty fantastic. And that leads me into the broader point. I do want to talk about Glock broadly. I think Gaston Glock deserves a pedestal right next to John Moses Browning. You know, John Moses Browning kind of put a dent in time with the 1911 where, he created something, and for generations, everything after that is some variation or inspired by that invention. He really changed the world with that pistol. And I think Gaston Glock did the same thing. Now, of course, there were striker-fired pistols before this. There were polymer pistols before this. But let's face it, where are they, right? You have to have this synergy of good design, good manufacturing, good marketing, and the gun you have to check a lot of boxes. And just like John Moses Browning did it with the 1911, I think Gaston Glock deserves a ton of praise for what he did with his Glock pistol. I think he did something really unique, really special, and he made a good pistol. They're very lightweight, they're very simple, they have very few parts, they're easy to manufacture, and what's not to like, right? Now, some people, out of preference, maybe don't like the way they look or feel, and that's totally understandable. However, it's undeniable that they are a good pistol, and they work quite well. Now, I have settled on, as the video is titled, the Glock 19, and I do believe, for me personally, it is the only Glock worth owning. And I'm going to tell you why. I don't want to carry a 40 or a 357 SIG or any of these other cartridges. I like 45, but if I'm going to carry a 45, it's going to be in a 1911. And so really that narrows it down to 9. So now we're just talking about size. What's the size of the pistol I want? And of course, I have a 26. It's technically my wife's, but that to me is a little bit too small. And so, why not go Glock 17? A lot of you guys know that I'm a full-size gun guy. Well, what you have to realize is I'm a full-size gun guy in the 1911. particularly in these older classic designs, I don't like shrunk down versions of them because those shrunk down versions are just not proven in a combat setting over time, right? But I don't think that's true for the Glock. I think the Glock 19 is very well proven. And so there's really no advantage to me besides a few more bullets, 2 technically, to have a longer grip and a longer barrel. I think the Glock 19 is really the Goldilocks zone between all the models for what you get. Now, I know some of the guns that are really popular are like the thinner Glocks that are 9mm. They're like a single stack. And hey, listen, you do you. But for me, I think the OG design is kind of the GOAT. It's the king, and I'm not really interested in the other stuff. Now, I will say I love the Glock 30S. I think that is a fantastic pistol. I'll roll in a picture here of my old 30S. I think it's a great gun. You got 8+1. It is a lot of juice for a gun that's slightly smaller than a Glock 19 and about the same thickness. And the fact that it's 45, man, the recoil you would never know it. It is just such a smooth shooting pistol. But again, if I'm going to carry 45, it's going to be a 1911, so that's why I don't own one anymore. Now, let's talk about the Gen 4. Why did I choose Gen 4, and why do I think that's peak Glock? Now, I got to say, I said that in one of my shorts recently, and good Lord, the hornet's nest I didn't know I was going to kick. I said that the Gen 4 was peak Glock 19, and a pile of people sprouted horns and hoofs and started climbing the walls and spitting pea soup. Holy crap. I just didn't know that people were so passionate about the difference between Glock generations. Now look, I like the Gen 3. The overwhelming majority, 90% of every Glock I've ever owned was a Gen 3. I'm a fan. But I do think the Gen 4 made just enough improvements over the 3 without dipping into weirdo territory. So what I like about the Gen 4 is they did this magazine release. It's wider, it's just bigger in every dimension, but it's not protruding out any further. Just for me, this feels exactly right. The old Gen 3 magazine releases, which I have an extended one here, it just doesn't feel right, man. They always stuck out to me. Every time I use the mag release, I'm just like, I hate you. I hate you. So that was always annoying to me. The other thing they did was the grip texture. Now, you guys know I'm not much for aggressive grip textures or grip texture at all sometimes. But I will say when I felt the Gen 4, I went, oh, that's quite nice. Because it's not super aggressive to where it's going to tear up your clothes and, make you offer a blood sacrifice with your hands. But it's also not a pretend texture like on the Gen 3s. Because let's face it, that texture on there is basically like resembling soap. It's just not, it's not a texture at all. So I think this grip texture is like the Goldilocks zone for grip texture. It just feels like, okay, good. It's there, but it's not going to try to imitate a porcupine at any moment. And then the last thing I think they did was with the recoil spring. So the recoil spring assembly, I actually really like, and not for the reason you think, I'm sure. So a lot of people back in the Gen 3 days watched that video from James Yeager where he did this ridiculous torture test of a Glock and melted his Gen 3 guide rod. I have said it before and I'll say it again. The people that changed their guide rod because they watched that video, listen, I'm saying this with love and with respect. You got to wake up. You're never going to do that to your gun. So if you like a Gen 3, leave the guide rod alone. It's not going to melt, okay? The reason I like the Gen 4 system is because it actually did change the recoil. It made the recoil rounder and a little bit softer. Not dramatically so. And this wasn't a reason I bought it. It was just a feature that I noticed after I bought it. And I have to say, I've come to really prefer this system because it really does make the recoil very gentle. Not that it was sharp before, but you get the idea. It's a slight improvement. And so those three things are really the only reasons I prefer the Gen 4. The Gen 3 and the 4 are so closely related. I don't know how people feel so passionately about the differences because they're not that vast. Now, I will say the Gen 4s also come with, you see here it says MBS, the multiple backstrap system, or modular. I'm not really sure what that stands for, but anyway, you have the ability to add these panels on the back of the pistol to change the grip angle a bit, make the grip thicker. I think the stock Glock grip angle is fine. And I never really liked the idea of this plastic pin holding this grip on the back of the pistol. It just wiggles around and feels doesn't feel right. So I just run it without that, and I don't even know where those are, to be frank with you. So that's it. It's just a good old USA made, and I do like that it says USA on it. USA made Gen 4 19. I think it's kind of the Glock. So as far as what I've done to this pistol, I only ever do two things to Glocks: sights and a Ghost 3.5 pound trigger connector. Now, I think the stock Glock sights are actually really good. I think they make sense to my eye, the little ball and block, as I call it. I've never had a problem with stock Glock sights. However, I am rough on things, and so I have broken Glock sights, and that's the only reason I upgrade them. Now, I know they make metal Glock sights, and if I ever change, I'll probably go to those because I think they're pretty great. But these were on sale at the time. Gosh, I don't even know how many years ago, for like $65. These are Trijicon Bright and Tough, just 3-dot sights. So it's an adequate sight. They do just fine. Nothing to write home about. And then the trigger bar connector. Stock Glock triggers are not the worst. But when you live in the world that I live in, which is the single action world, those really nice triggers, you jump to a Glock and it's off-putting. Can you train into it? Absolutely. But in the same breath, I do think that, man, the trigger bar connector, they cost like $10, and it's such an easy solution. Some people feel funny about that, or maybe have had bad experience with trigger bar connectors. In my 15 years of shooting Glock, I have never had a bad experience with those. Now, I will say I've only ever used Ghost, and I haven't even bought a trigger bar connector in probably 12 years. So I'm still using the original Ghost connector. I bought 3 of them 12 years ago, and I don't even know if they're in business anymore, to be frank with you. So I think those 2 upgrades are really all you need, and besides that, the Glock is great the way it sits. So let's talk about shooting experience. Shooting experience is fantastic. I actually think Glocks have a really nice impulse, especially, as I said, with the Gen 4s. I think their recoil system's great. Like, there's a lot of 9mm pistols out there, and whether they're heavy or they're light or they're steel or they're polymer, some of them are just unreasonably snappy. Like, I'll never forget, I think it was my granddad's CZ Shadow, and I'll never forget shooting that pistol against the Glock, and the CZ was so sharp. Like, the recoil felt like the gun's gonna just have a rapid, unplanned disassembly at any minute. It didn't feel right. There's been other pistols like that. Now, I will say, I think it was the CZ P10 C. I had one of those, and that was nice. But there are just some pistols out there, even in 9mm, that the recoil impulse is strange and sharp. The Glock is not that way. The recoil impulse is very round and smooth and flat. And I think they're a joy to shoot. I found myself, when I was out shooting, filming some of the footage you've seen in this video, just really enjoying shooting the pistol. I was really having a great time, even though it was raining the whole time, which is not great. Reliability. Look, we all know the Glocks are legendary with their reliability, even though people do very silly things to their Glocks to prove that reliability. They are very reliable. Now, they're not perfectly reliable, as some people would report. And listen, I'm saying this with love and respect. You can't get your pride tied up in the reliability of a handgun. Like when people send me these videos of people having problems with their 1911s, it doesn't hurt my feelings. Like, it doesn't threaten me. It doesn't make me feel like, oh no, I'm wrong, because I know what I know, right? But at the same time, yeah, even my guns fail. All guns fail. There's nothing that's perfect. And so the Glock, even though their slogan would like to suggest they're perfect, they're not. And just so happens, when I was filming some of the shooting footage for this video, the only pistol on the range that day, between a high power, a 1911, my Glock, I had my M1 carbine out there. I'm trying to think of all the semi-autos I had out there. I think that was it. Out of all the guns I shot that day, the only one that had a failure was the Glock. I'm not, I didn't manufacture this crisis. I'm just telling you that's the way it went. Now, it was only one. I know some people can blame it on ammunition or whatever. I'm just telling you, the only pistol that had a failure that day was the Glock. Not my high power, not my 1911. And listen, that doesn't freak me out. It's okay. Guns fail. The most important thing is that it's largely reliable and you know how to work through the problems. But overall, I think the Glock, we all rest easy knowing we have a Glock in our waistband because they are supremely reliable. And partially is, I think Gaston Glock figured out the controlled feed system, which I don't know. When this video comes out, I'm not sure if that video will be out yet. But understanding the controlled feed system in semi-automatic pistols, if you can get that down, you got a reliable pistol. And the 1911 has that in spades. Now, the Glock itself is very reliable. You know, you have the Browning tilt barrel system where when it's in battery, the chamber portion of the pistol is locked forward in the slide opening. And when the pistol starts to recoil to the rear, that barrel drops down and the barrel tilts, which is the Browning tilt barrel design. So we still have 1911 influence here. And the barrel tilts back to receive the next cartridge, up the feed ramp, out of the magazine, into the chamber it goes. Now, what's a little unique about Glocks, and I'm not quite sure why this is, I've never researched it, they have what's called an unsupported barrel, meaning the bullet inside that barrel is not completely sealed. The bottom of the barrel, there's a little gap between the brass and the chamber. And you start to notice this when you're a reloader because you have something in the brass called the Glock belly. Now, this is particularly prevalent in 40 caliber and 45 and all those other bigger cartridges. 9mm are small enough that you don't really notice it, really ever. But it is a weird thing where, guys freak out about brass getting beat up in a 1911. Listen, if you want to destroy brass, shoot a Glock. That belly that occurs in the brass on a Glock, especially when I used to shoot 40 a lot and 45 in Glocks, it's not recoverable very often. You know, you're trying to resize a part of the case that is quite thick and it's a critical area. It's not like the mouth where you can bend it back. You're talking about the base of the cartridge. And so, it's not a big deal, but it's just a strange thing. And now, aftermarket barrels for Glocks usually have a standard supported chamber, but I would never switch to them because I think probably the most durable, toughest, well-done part of the Glock is the barrel. Their barrels are just so well done. Yeah, other than that, takedown, we all know it. Super, super simple. You can take the pistol apart into 4 pieces. I think it's hilarious. I literally can't help myself from grinning when I think about their Glock armorer classes. Because I can teach you how to be a Glock armorer. And here's your Glock tool, a ballpoint pen. You can literally take this whole pistol apart down to its smallest component with a ballpoint pen. So I think it's a little funny when people make a big deal that they're a Glock armorer. The guns are remarkably simple. There's very few parts, and everything goes together very simply. And, look, they last a good long time. These guns are very durable, and I think there are some very old Glock pistols at the Smyrna, Georgia factory that you can go shoot with over 1 million rounds through the pistol, and they're still rolling. So they're very, very durable. So I'm going to bring it to a close with this. Look, the Glock is undeniably good. They're great pistols. They're a joy to shoot. They're kind of a fantastic carry pistol. You know, they're very lightweight and you know, just not a lot to hate on. However, I will make a point here. The Browning High Power is only 7 ounces heavier than a Glock 19, and it's only about that much longer. Interesting fact, they both carry 15 rounds in the magazine. So, if I'm going to pick one to concealed carry, look, the Browning High Power is a much better pistol to shoot. I am way more accurate with the High Power. They have really great sights on mine in particular. The trigger, listen, I will fight you, okay? Nobody come at me and try to claim that the Glock is better than a high power trigger. I know the high power trigger is a little funny, but it is not in the same universe, okay? Those two are very separate. The trigger's better on the high power. The overall ergonomics, in my opinion, are better on the high power. So, is the Glock a great carry pistol? Yeah, but also there's others that are like really close in weight. And when you're talking about 7 ounces, that's about half a can of soda. And if half a can of soda is really breaking you for concealed carry weight, I think there are larger problems at play here with respect. So, look, I think it's a great pistol, but I don't think I'm bringing that up to say that there are other pistols in the same class that are like all steel with better triggers that I just frankly shoot better, that you can kind of do the same thing. But look, Glocks aren't going away. And I will say this is going to be my final point, and probably a controversial one. Everyone is trying to be a Glock. Everyone's trying to make that 19-sized, polymer-framed, high-capacity, striker-fired pistol that's really reliable. And to me, I think there's one OG, and it's Glock. Why would I go to somebody else when I can just go straight to the original design that put a dent in time with their pistol? It's the same argument where, you know, people say, hey, try this disgusting piece of fish. It tastes like chicken. I'm just going to eat chicken, right? I think it's the same thing. A little bit of a funny example, but I think it's the same thing with the Glock. Look, they're doing it better than anybody else. I think their pistols are way more reliable. They're way safer. Cough, cough, sig. I think they are simpler pistols, and I think they are proven to last a very long time, and they're going to serve you well. So for me, I think Glock is the OG. And controversially, I think the 19 Gen 4 is really the one that's worth owning if you're asking me. So there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. That is the Glock pistol. Tell me if you own one. And if so, what are you packing? I'd love to hear about it. If you want to get in touch with me directly, you can reach out to me on X. That is the best place for us to connect. Please go follow me over there. I'm much more active on there every day than I am on YouTube. And then we also just started a Patreon. You can go there to help support the channel, help us keep growing and keep doing what we're doing, because none of this is cheap, as you well know. Now, on Patreon, there's going to be some specific features that we're going to start developing. We'll have members-only live shows. There will be technical videos that I can't put on YouTube that will be for members only there, and I will also respond to Patreon questions first. And more things coming. I want to try to make that worthwhile. So if you want to go support us there, that would be most welcome. So hope you guys enjoyed that. I'm glad you're here, and we'll see you on the next one.